Okay, here we are. So, hello, welcome to the Synonym Spaces. So, I'm here with the management team of Synonym. You might wonder what Synonym is. If you haven't come across it yet, Synonym is a company that's building apps and protocols to create a post-hyper Bitcoinization ecosystem, which is very exciting. And they've done something really, really incredible the last few days, and we're here to speak about that. But over to the speaker. I want you to introduce yourselves. Paulo, John, and Reza, please introduce yourselves to our audience.
Hello, everyone. I'm Paolo Arduino, CTO at Tether and BitFinex.
Hi, everyone. I'm Reza. I'm CTO at Synonym.
Hey, this is John Carvalho. I am CEO at Synonym.
Okay, that was brief, but let's move on to the first question that we have. So, can you tell us a little bit more of what we witnessed this week from Corey, who posted this fantastic video that got a lot of reactions on the internet? Tell us a little bit more about what moment in history we experienced.
So I guess I'll summarize by saying, for a long time, we've been trying to work on getting tokens working on the Lightning Network. And what Corey demonstrated was basically the first time that we were able to show moving a token across a Lightning channel using Omni technology. So he did a little video demo where he basically showed how you could construct the transactions to create a channel on Bitcoin and using Omni information within Bitcoin transactions to form this channel and to demo peers and then pass Tether tokens across the channel and basically use Lightning in the same way that we used to use it only for Bitcoin, but now also for tokens.
Yeah, I'd like to also add that. So we've been, the Omnipol team has been developing this, working on this project for some time. It's been on testnet for some time now. And, one day we Corey thought, hey, we feel pretty confident about this, that, we're not going to lose any coins by going on mainnet. So there was some small modifications needed to switch to mainnet. And yeah, when you opened some channels and some tethers back and forth, and yeah, it went smoothly. And yeah, I mean, it's been working on testnet for some now, but yeah, it's great to see it that it also works on mainnet as well.
I think that from the Tether side is like going back to the roots where we as a token, it started from Omni layer, and now after 8 years, almost 8 years, is getting back to the same transport layer, but on steroids with with Omnivolt. So it's great to see. Got super excited when I saw the demo and the actual transaction live.
Amazing. Can you tell us a little bit more on why this is so cool? Why should the Bitcoin plebs, the Bitcoin businesses, the devs, the exchanges, wallets, why should they care? Why is this such a cool thing?
Well, I'd say that, there's a lot of reasons that it's cool. I think you can look at, just for the size that Tether has grown to in the past few years, current $81 billion of issuance. And it's been growing a lot, in various countries and giving people use cases that are outside of the typical US banking system. And so this is a way to kind of make tokens retail friendly and commercial friendly in that they're inexpensive and instant. Unlike, the base layer of Bitcoin, it's basically just using the same advantages that Lightning was bringing to Bitcoin, but bringing those advantages and scaling advantages to tokens as well. And so Bitcoin, businesses can now think about issuing their tokens, issuing credit in various forms, and now they can pretty soon be able to think about using some of our tech and OmniBolts and Omni's tech to be able to add this to their web platforms, to their apps, and anything they want to do creatively with accepting and supporting tokens.
Yeah, I'd like to add that it just obviously opens up. There's more use cases for Lightning Network technology. So as this brings additional use case, hopefully bring additional developers. And as you bring more developers, there's more innovation, hopefully more creativity, and a lot of that will spill over to Bitcoin because it's using the same technology. So yeah, that's what I'm excited about. There is I remember there was a long time ago about lightning swaps. So you could switch between different networks. This is some time ago between Litecoin Lightning Network, Bitcoin Lightning Network, but the Lightning Network never really went anywhere. But Tether has a massive demand, and there is a lot of use cases for it out there. And I think I'm hoping to see just a whole new range of innovation coming to Bitcoin uh, because of this.
And really, I mean, from the exchange point of view, I think that putting tokens on Lightning just makes sense. We are seeing from the Bitfinex side an uptake of BTC on Lightning Network recently, well, since we launched. And we are also seeing a lot of complaints about still high fees on Ethereum. When it comes to sending back and forth Tether, definitely Tether supports other blockchains, but having imagine if all exchanges could open channels among themselves, and could settle transactions nearly instantly. That would be a game changer also for arbitrage, right? So it's a way for centralized exchanges. It's a way to increase performance in transacting tokens, even higher than what they have now. And also from a pure interest point of view, I think that it is time for Bitcoin and Bitcoin like for Bitcoin to start protecting also other tokens. Right now, almost everything is on Ethereum. I feel like it's a good thing if finally Bitcoin is also becoming the de facto chain for securing other types of assets and not just BTC.
Yeah, I want to also add that Bitcoiners, a lot of Bitcoiners out there like USDT, and if they want to use US now, they have to use all these other chains, and learning how these other chains work is just additional hurdle. And but with Omni and Omnibolt, they could just use their existing Bitcoin knowledge and Lightning knowledge to start using Tether.
Yeah, it's complement what Reza and Paulo are saying. Like, there's also a chance that bringing this added utility to Lightning could turn it into like one of the more, quote unquote, killer apps for Lightning or in Bitcoin, where we're giving extra use cases to Bitcoin and Lightning, and this could, increase the amount of fees that miners earn, and thus help supplement Bitcoin, and how it's funded and its security, and it could also help, bring a whole new set of users to the Lightning network and give more incentives for more services and businesses to adopt Lightning and support Lightning within their platforms and within their business models.
Awesome. So now that you've done a test transaction, what's next? When can people start issuing their own tokens and using token channels in a wallet? Is there anything kind of on the roadmap that you can share?
Sure. We have several things next. They all clump together. So it's kind of a bunch of milestones that make up one major milestone, which is basically getting the initial bootstrapped, set of services and applications, ready at relatively the same time. So that would include our upcoming mobile wallet, as well as a Chrome wallet we're going to introduce. But basically, these wallets will support Bitcoin, Lightning, tokens on Lightning, as well as slash tags, which is a topic for another day. But we need, everybody needs some kind of wallet to be able to support and hold these tokens in and hold the keys for them. So that's one prerequisite. And then also our plans are to integrate this Omnibolt and token tech within Bitfinex and within Blocktank. And, maybe Reza can talk a bit more about the Bitfinex and Blocktank angles, but we kind of want all of these three things to be in place to be able to formally launch the first demonstration token, which would be Instant Tether, and then we also partner with or help other businesses issue tokens that help demonstrate the use cases as well.
Yeah, so we have to bootstrap the network. So before that, Omnibolt itself, there's still some work needs to be done on there. But assuming that we get to that stage where we feel like it's ready, fully ready to be used by everyone, we have to bootstrap the network. So the block tank lightning provider would help selling Lightning Tether liquidity, and obviously on Bitfinex, supporting deposit and withdrawals using Lightning Tether. Hopefully together with the mobile app and Bitfinex and Blockchain, we're able to bootstrap the network. And at the beginning, it will go through a quote unquote reckless period, just how Bitcoin Lightning Network did, and we'll get some early users who are wanting to play with this and start using it, but eventually hoping that it will hit critical scale and more businesses would adopt it.
Great. Paulo, is there anything you want to add, or should we move on to the next question?
No, I think that both Reza and John quite really well. I think that now is a matter of course, making sure that the entire process is as safe as possible. But I think that now that it's proven to be a viable solution, the focus will be actually on the robustness of the product, of the Omnibolt product. So it will require definitely a little bit of time from my point of view, a few months of additional work for sure. And I believe that will be important to invite other developers to contribute, to look at the code base, to contribute and make the product stronger.
Awesome. So we've seen a lot of people kind of write and speculate about it on Twitter on what are some of the misconceptions that you have seen as a response to the video that was posted by Corey. What have you read on there about this Lightning transaction, which is a misconception in your point of view, and you want to set the record straight?
Oh, I mean, there are honestly a bunch. It was very enlightening to see people's initial responses and reactions. I'll try to focus on maybe a few. I would say a big one is just really not understanding how it works and wanting more information, and this resulting in kind of assuming, that it works in ways that it actually doesn't, and also assuming that it's more complicated or more, poorly designed than it actually is. But it actually is pretty simple and pretty elegant, and so a lot of people have asked me for a simple explanation of how it works, and I just tell them, Omni is Bitcoin actions with extra information inside about tokens. Omnibolt is, a node that supports transactions. And so thus you can now make channels out of these Bitcoin transactions that have this extra token info, and both Omni and Omnibolt understand this extra info. And so now you're able to also transfer tokens as you transfer Bitcoin, much the same way that Lightning does and on-chain Bitcoin works. Another one, I guess, is, talking about whether this is bad for Bitcoin or bloats the blockchain or is spammy. This is kind of an old argument that has resurfaces once in a while about doing some Bitcoin. And I just really disagree with it in concept, because essentially every single Bitcoin transaction is an abstraction with an agreed upon value off chain. When I pay for something in Bitcoin, that amount that merchant or counterparty values that Bitcoin and however they value it is totally off chain. Like, it's decided separately from Bitcoin, and it's not enforced by the Bitcoin protocol in any special way. And so if every Bitcoin transaction abstraction, then really all we're talking about whether something is valid or good for Bitcoin is whether it follows the rules and whether they pay the fees that miners expect to be able to include these transactions in blocks. And so I think just gives Bitcoin more utility and allows more value to be able to be put on top of Bitcoin, thus making Bitcoin even more valuable and giving people the extra use case of digital bearer instruments, for tokens and credit, essentially. But yeah, I mean, there are other ones. I don't know if we want to talk about misconceptions all day, and probably I'm sure that Paulo and Reza have seen a few as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of the questions just come from not knowing Omni well. So Omni is relatively an old technology. It was one of the first protocols built on top of Bitcoin before Lightning Network. and it's sort of just been on the sidelines for some time now, and people just are not aware of it. And a lot of people didn't even know that you could have tokens on Bitcoin. So I think a lot of it is just people don't fully understand how it works. And I guess part of our job is to have nice educational tools and documentation for people to really understand how it works. And a lot of Bitcoiners are naturally skeptical about everything. So yeah, I mean it's good that we're getting these questions. I think because we're happy to answer them. And yeah, I think it just comes from educating people about how Omni works.
Yeah, I agree with the sentiment because I believe that the majority of the people imagine that Omni layer requires the Omni token to work, while it is that is not correct. The Omni token is just a pass that is needed to use certain other application created by the Omni team. But the only thing that you need in order to send back and forth Omni transactions is actually Bitcoin. And so it's I believe that we can say that is the closest of probably the closest of all the side chains, or well, not side chains, is layer, but of the transport layer built on top of Bitcoin that you can have, because it actually moves on Bitcoin. So I think that explaining that you don't need actually the Omni token to do anything with the network, it's one of the most important things to also keep the Bitcoiners, the most core Bitcoiners calm.
Yeah, I wanted to mention another kind of popular misconception, which was you guys made me think of it, which is that this could bring a lot of the bad parts of shitcoins to Bitcoin. That this will bring a lot of shitcoins, and I want to mention that it's not a small task to bootstrap another liquidity asset network in Lightning. Like, you have to actually have people that want to open channels with each other and actually transact with each other. And that's not really how the shit tree works. Mostly the people that are using shitcoins are just, trading on exchanges and using them custodial. Nobody's really running nodes. And you can't really bootstrap a scam in Lightning very easily, because you have to basically bootstrap an actual network and be supplying liquidity and kind of doing the plan that we're doing to bootstrap Tether in Lightning. And like, that requires having cooperative exchange, having someone that has an actual LSP, having a wallet that actually supports the technology, and people that actually want to purchase and connect with these channels. And that's not really the ecosystem that I think that shitcoins opt in. So I actually think that it's a nice friction in this context, where you're not really going to have a bunch of shitcoin scams making Lightning tokens, because nobody will actually want to run or be a part of that Lightning network.
Thanks, John. You touched upon it a little bit already. So what are some of the obstacles and barriers that you kind of see, besides kind of like bootstrapping a network and so on, and how do you plan to overcome them, or kind of help various partners, businesses to kind of overcome them and launch more tokens on Lightning?
As Paulo mentioned, I think that making sure it's safe is probably the shortest term and most important that we have. We recently had audits done on the stack, and we'll have audits done after these updates. And so we just want to make sure that everything in the stack is really safe and reliable before we go trying to convince people to, buy these channels, own Tether that's within Lightning, add this to their apps and add this to their platforms and integrate it. We want to make sure that we're confident, and we want to demonstrate that we're confident enough to run it ourselves in these notable platforms before we start convincing others that it's safe to do so. So yeah, I would say that audit is probably one thing. There are some other obvious things, like figuring out the user experience for this inside of a wallet. It's kind of a new challenge. It's a novel thing to convey to a user. And then the rest, I guess, is just business development, just going out there and educating different apps and platforms and businesses about this technology and helping assist them with integrating it and adding it into their products.
Yeah, I'd like to add that. So the team that works on OmniVolt is quite small, and the number of people that actually know how this stuff works is very small. So development is not as fast as I'd like it to be. So, getting more people to contribute and look at this is a challenge. There's so many cool projects out there to work on, and sticking out of the rest of the projects out there and getting the attention of developers is definitely a challenge. So, if anybody out there thinks this is a cool project and they'd like to contribute, you should check it out.
Yeah, so great. So what do you think besides Instant Tether or USDT as a token? What else might we see? Kind of just blue sky thinking. What do you think? Kind of where is this heading? Who should be kind of looking into launching their own tokens on Lightning? What kind of businesses? What kind of individuals would kind of benefit from that?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, obviously my interest is not in the shitcoin angle. We're not trying to create new monies. We're trying to show how, you can have trusted credit and the use cases related to trusted credit. So I could imagine people doing things like, instead of having gift cards, having gift tokens. I believe that tokens would be a strict upgrade in format from the way gift cards are currently, working, and how they're basically operated as like an open password. Making them as tokens would allow an aftermarket. I'd like to see maybe more people issuing stable coins, like other fiat currencies in smaller countries, and letting them kind of compete in this way. Not necessarily a CBDC, because you're not going to have all the added rules and things that come with that kind of thought process, but just more people issuing is more decentralization and more competition. And we don't need all of the money to be, we don't want Tether to grow into like a multi-trillion-dollar bank, right? Like, I don't want to speak bad about Tether, and I'm not saying I don't want it to grow so much as, too much centralization could obviously be dangerous, because it becomes like a bigger and bigger target. So you want more people issuing credit than just, a handful of banks. I don't know, things like reward and loyalty points. These could be done as tokens. And then I guess my favorite kind of one, I'm hoping people have the kind of bravery to do at some point, is like product tokens, where people, instead of even caring about fiat at all anymore, we just stop issuing things denominated in dollar, and we start issuing the things denominated in the things. And so basically having like Starbucks issue like a large coffee token, or, Burger King having burger tokens, or what have you. And this way the company becomes kind of liable for an IOU that would be redeemed for an actual specific product that isn't denominated in any specific money. They just have to figure out, making sure that they have enough, resources to be able to provide the liabilities that they put out there. And I think that if you have product tokens, that you can kind of have this really interesting aftermarket that can kind of automate the pricing, because everything is digital now and everything is a digital bearer instrument. So you can kind of have like order books for tokens. You could have different competing burger shops accepting the burger tokens of other burger shops, because they'd be able to then sell those tokens for whatever currency they preferred. It could really open things up in the marketplace, and kind of like almost like digital token futures or such. And that could make things really interesting, and it could make things much less reliant on the current situation where we're like all like basing everything on a government fiat.
Yeah, I guess I like to imagine that. I'm curious to see if we're going to get opening a Pandora's box of hundreds and thousands of asset networks, although I highly doubt that's going to happen, just because John said creating a liquidity network is not as easy as making your own super centralized blockchain. However, realistically, I think like games is kind of an interesting and like a token within the game. I think it's interesting. So L2s, one of the key properties is that they're really fast and they're really cheap. So that makes sense for games. So if you're playing within the game, you could get some tokens, and there is already a whole bunch of people working on games with Bitcoin Lightning Network in games. So I'm wondering if those groups of people would find this interesting, where they could just have some kind of token that's used within the game.
Yeah, on my side, I think that if we think that all the tokens that are not Bitcoins are centralized, I think that the liquidity problem issue will kind of be less and less important, right? So imagine Starbucks could, start a bunch of nodes, and they will be, anyway, the central bank of the Starbucks tokens, right? So it's I believe that the interesting fact is to start building on the technology that is on technologies that are being built for Bitcoin, right? It's also my main interest is seeing how a Lightning Network style channel will be in use also will inherently bring more research, more efforts to general Lightning Network improvement, so that that also the entire Bitcoin ecosystem will benefit from it. So I think that I'm not interested to see, the next, Shiba Inu or something else being built here. But I'm more interested in decentralized credit, as was said by John. The rewards token business is massive, right? We think about really Starbucks and the travel miles and everything that you can think about. All, the barber shop in your small town is likely giving some sort of free discount or some discounts on some haircuts. So that could be represented by a Lightning token. So and the end benefit is going to create better tools if all the tools are compatible with the technology that also is powering let's say the BTC Lightning Network, then everyone can benefit from additional investments in this technology.
Awesome. So lots of use cases will be happening. So I want to go back to one thing that John already kind of touched, because I think it's really important for people to understand what is really the difference between the many shitcoin stuff right now and the many Lightning tokens that we will see in the future, or are they the same? So let's just kind of clarify that, set the record straight on why Lightning tokens are different from shitcoins.
Sure. I think I can make it pretty simple. Like, shitcoins are trying to be a new generalized money. Like, they are a native token within a blockchain, and they're trying to say that they're better than Bitcoin or the next Bitcoin. But really, all they are is just counterfeit additional Bitcoin, counterfeit Bitcoin tokens. And so they're just always more centralized and more complex and more prone to centralization. And they're just trying to be Bitcoin, but different. And, that is not what tokens are. Tokens are actually credit. So they're basically promises from centralized identifiable entities to redeem this token for a specific thing. And so it's basically putting your reputation on the line and saying, this token equals a specific thing that you can redeem it for. And so this is a credit that you have with me and my reputation and my entity, and I can build my reputation, in such a way that you may or may not trust me to issue, X amount of tokens, or give you a discount for the tokens if I have no reputation. Like, there's all kinds of ways that you can, express your actual current reputation through how you issue the tokens and what you promise to redeem them for. And then the market price them separately if you begin to lose that reputation or gain reputation. And so the major difference, in summary, is that, shitcoins are trying to be a new market fiat, essentially, competing with Bitcoin. Tokens are trying to basically a digital representation of a credit. And so they're just a way of issuing credit on your reputation.
Yeah, I think John covered that well. But just on the shitcoin topic, is a lot of these projects like to associate themselves with Bitcoin for publicity or to make their price go up or whatever reason. And I can sort of imagine them seeing this as an opportunity to create a Lightning version of their shitcoin in order to look cool and try to convince people that, hey, we have our own network as well. So I think there's a chance that we might see some of these types of projects pop up.
Yeah, I have started to see that a little bit. Not with the native token stuff yet, but I have started to see some of the other like algorithmic stable coins and kind of side chain stable coins asking about, what can we do to get DAI or SOV or, these other kind of, I don't know, they're like in between a shitcoin and a stable coin, in my opinion. And so these are the people that are interested so far. But what I tell them is, they're not the gatekeepers. If you want to issue a token and find some way to integrate it with some other chain, we can't really stop you. We're just not really interested in use cases that aren't credit.
Yeah, I can just say that I was reading Odell saying that Tether is just a shitcoin, and made me laugh because in a way it is, because everything that is not Bitcoin is a shitcoin. So it's I think that really depends on the actual use case, and we cannot prevent people using this technology for whatever they want.
Awesome. So let's move the conversation back a little bit on tech. Why did you choose this particular design? Why are you using Omni? Or are there any other token formats that you'll support in the future? Can you give a little bit of a backstory on how you discovered Omni and kind of make the decision to move ahead with issuing Lightning tokens on Omni and not something else?
Sure. I mean, like, about 3 years ago, I got the idea while talking with Sergey and Justin at Berryfill about that, tokens on Lightning would actually be something that could be possible. And so I did a lot of research and experimented with other projects before we landed on using Omni. And ultimately, the reason why we landed on Omni was just because as simple as it was, and even though it had existed for years, it really was the most straightforward and elegant design to be able to actually get this and ship this for people so they could use it in, a way that wouldn't take years and years and years, and a way that would actually be relatively safe. And so rather than experiment with really complicated designs and try to like get a whole new token format off of the ground that was of questionable design in the first place, we decided to go with something that had been tried and tested for years. And now there happened to be a independent team out of China that was already trying to bring Omni to Lightning with the Omnibolt, node and protocol. And so we basically started, implementing their work and working with them for our wallet. And Corey created the Omnibolt JavaScript library, and that's already a public repo that other people can now play with and try to start adding to their own platforms. And so, yeah, we just landed on Omni, and we think it's a good choice and the best choice that's out there at the moment. Now, I'm hearing a lot of word, and I have information, about other people that are doing other token projects. There are other ones that have existed for a while and plan to ship someday, and there are new designs that people are creating using, new technology that Bitcoin offers. But in the end, I think that they all have different trade-offs, and I'm a little bit skeptical that any type of higher tech or more modern design, say using a taproot construction or some maybe when CTV gets approved, there'll be new ways to do tokens with that. I don't know, but like these things will all have trade-offs because they're always kind of adding some complexity and adding some assumptions that might not be as simple and as reliable as just attaching extra data to a Bitcoin transaction. Now, I could be wrong. They could be more scalable, and they could be more private, and they could have other kind of benefits for those trade-offs that Omni might not have. And if that's the case, we will try to support them. But for now, Omni is the only one that actually is shipping and the only one that's close to being, ready for the public. And so we're trying to focus on that and double down on that to make sure that, we can actually get this in people's hands and make it usable. I am also interested in seeing whether or not we need to be using a blockchain at all for tokens. A lot of people like to joke and say just use a database. Well, databases don't typically offer this kind of digital bearer instrument capability that Bitcoin does. So I don't know what the trade-offs will be for sure if we try to just quote unquote use a database and try to get the same kind of benefits that we do with Bitcoin, anchored tokens. But I am basically open-minded, interested to always finding what the most optimal line is. And if a more optimal design comes that is just a no-brainer or just a strict upgrade, we will definitely look at adding it to our wallet and supporting it within our products.
Awesome. Since we have two CTOs as well as speakers, both CTO of Tether and Bitfinex, and Reza, the CTO of Synonym, maybe you guys can give a little bit of an angle from a technical level on why Omni was chosen and if other formats potentially qualify in the future.
Yeah, well, one of the things is that Omni's been around for a long time and it's been battle tested, and there's already billions. I don't know exactly how much Tether is on Omni, so it's been battle tested. So if anything else was going to come out, it has to get battle tested on L1 and move on to L2, and that is a huge challenge to just get the L1 out and then put it on L2. And there's also a timing thing. All these projects take time, they take resources, they take developer time. So Omni is a project that was, it's been out, it's ready, and the work moving from layer 1 to layer 2, it's very difficult, as we could see with Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin Lightning is still, there's so many challenges in there, and trying to build the layer 1 asset and then moving into layer 2, that just seems like it's a big challenge. And now, if there's ways out there to do it that it's 10x better, then yeah, I think it's we're open to it. We don't we care about the end result, not just Omni itself. If we could get there to even more efficiency, using less resources, or we're able to build better user experiences of it, then it's even better. But yeah, other than I can't see anything out there that's 10x or 100 times better than what Omni could offer.
From my point of view, we'll see what the community will prefer. In the end, I believe that it's going to be really hard to have one protocol to rule them all. I believe that we'll see, since we have been saying that each token will need to bootstrap an entire network, it's likely there is also the possibility that this network will diverge in feature set and compatibility. So in the end, the community, the use cases will make, I believe, us taking certain decisions in terms of support. So I just believe that it's really unlikely that there will be one single protocol for tokens that will rule them all, but definitely there will be a sort of concentration on the ones that are more stable, stronger, have longer foundations, like Omni, on layer, and so on. So I agree with the general considerations that both John and Reza made.
I think one other perspective that's coming to mind, like we all talked about why we chose Omni in the context of Bitcoin, but we didn't talk about why we chose Omni instead of, say, ERC20 Ethereum token formats or Solana token formats, etc. We just talked about Bitcoin, and I would say, I hope to the Bitcoin audience that the reason why we chose, a Bitcoin native format is obvious, but maybe it isn't as obvious to people that are used to thinking about altcoins and using tokens on other chains. And the reason is that Bitcoin is actually the only blockchain that's actually focused on practical scaling. It's focused on being the most optimized, the most lightweight, the most capable of running a node by any user. And so in the end, every time Bitcoin makes some kind of scaling solution, it's going to be one that actually improves the scale of the network and the ability to use it affordably and quickly and for more users and more transactions. And Lightning Network is a really great example of that. No other blockchains are implementing layer 2s that actually are giving kind of the same qualities that Lightning is to Bitcoin. And so if we choose Omni and OmniBolt, it's because we know that anytime that Bitcoin developers come up with a new scaling method, that we're going to have access to that as well. And so all we have to do at minimum is just attach that extra data to that Bitcoin transaction and ride along with the latest, scaling tech that the Bitcoin devs create. And you don't have that kind of confidence and that kind of opportunity with, say, an ERC20 Ethereum, setup, or what ERC 721 or whatever they're doing these days, because Ethereum is not going to scale. You can see already they do things like put a bunch of garbage NFT UTXOs or a bunch of NFT unique information in there. They make a lot of unique smart contracts, and all the nodes have this burden on them, and the transaction fees go through the roof. You can't get, the value of whatever abstraction you've put becomes worth less than the cost it would be to move it, and the whole thing kind of starts bogging down more and more over time. And so you have like this race to make like the most centralized shitcoin instead of a race like Bitcoin to be the most decentralized and the most efficient.
I want to add something similar to what Paolo was saying, which is so when as a community Bitcoin was talking about having Lightning Network, people talked about it will unleash like innovation on layer 2. That's where we're going to innovate. And this Omnibolt is a layer 2 innovation, and it could be that a certain type of token matches Omnibolt. Other types of token there'll be other proposals, other projects out there that it matches what they want to do, and they all have different trade-offs, will have different features, different privacy trade-offs, different when it comes to liquidity, routing, pathfinding. All these are different trade-offs where each network could decide to make. Maybe there'll be a project out there that would only focus on how to for stable coins, L2 for stable coins. So I think it doesn't have to be just one, like Paolo said. It's not changing the base layer anymore. It's on L2, and we're free to do what we want on that higher level.
Nice. I'd like to now open the stage for the audience. If there's any questions that you have about the recent instant tether transaction in Lightning, about Omnibolt, Synonym in general, just kind of like, please request the mic.
Yeah, I brought up Bitcoin Xavier. If you have a question, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for this opportunity, everyone. Great demonstration in the video, but it raises a lot of questions for me because I don't understand it. So I've got a few questions. The first one is, if there's an application that's already supporting Lightning Network, what's the path to how should I say it, enable Omnibolt? So that's one of the questions. If I have an opportunity, I'll ask one more.
Generally, the requirement is that you would have to run an Omnibolt compatible node. And right now, that is literally only the Omnibolt implementation. And so Omnibolt is a fork of an LND node that also supports this token technology. And so in order to get other people and other nodes to be able to support this, they would have to run this node, or whatever node implementation they're running would have to add support for this token format, essentially support for Omni. And so the real question here is, do Lightning implementations want to support token technology? And if they do, which technology will they support? And then there's actually a secondary, which is, now how are you going to deal with this token? Because no matter what you do, every asset that you add into the Lightning Tech kind of model requires a new liquidity network. And so even if you make these channels interoperable, or you add atomic swapping or these kinds of things, you still have that bootstrapping problem. And so this is going to be something where you're going to have to already be incentivized and actually have real use cases for people to get this off of the ground. You're not going to be able to just kind of throw it onto the Lightning Network and everybody is just going to support it.
So I think that answers part of my next question. What I wanted to know was, suppose all of this is working and you've got the Omnibolt node and everything else, then a channel, does it have to be specifically opened for Tether? And once done, does it only support Tether, or does it support both Sats and Tether? So I think based on your answer, it will support only Tether, isn't it?
I actually think you can have multiple assets, but I think there might. Corey would be probably the best person to answer it, but maybe Reza or Paulo knows the more technical answer. But I think generally you could have multiple tokens within a channel, but you're going to get some complications there. You know, like if you run out of one token and have another token left, or if you move all the Bitcoin but you still have tokens left, you kind of like have to get some Bitcoin back to be able to move the other tokens. So it creates kind of tricky situations both for user experience and for functions within the node to be able to do that. But I actually think it can be done to have more than one asset in a channel.
Right. Okay. And the Omnibolt node that's there, it's a fully compatible Lightning node, isn't it? So if somebody uses that, they're not losing any of the Lightning capability.
Technically, no, not yet. Right now, Omnibolt team has only focused on the token use case, and they've actually made like their own customized design where they've actually segregated the keys from the node. And so this way, we can actually have a user experience where the user can hold their keys and only do the signing and not actually have to run a node at all, which is actually a really nice change when you think about a mobile wallet user experience. But they are currently working on adding normal Bitcoin functionality, and we're not sure. You'd have to talk to that team whether or not it will also have the key segregation aspect to it. But at minimum, it will work the same way as the current LND Lightning. And so they're updating. That's one of the things that was part of the process of the audit and updating the Omnibolt platform is to add normal Bitcoin transactions as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Really looking forward to future developments in this area. Thank you.
Awesome. We have Javier has a question.
Okay, thank you, guys. I've been following Synonym since John was here in El Salvador and he announced the product. So I'm little curious about if you can tell us what is the difference between what you are proposing with this kind of tokens against the RGB kind of tokens that are also trying to be built in this kind of third layer solution. Actually, they are being working, I think that almost for 3 years or something like that. I don't know, just wanting to know the key difference that you guys can tell us. And also, if you are trying to build first an stable coin token like Tether, because you are pointing to a future where there are other tokens that are, I don't know, like trying to get you, if you're a user, to have some extra liquidity if you stake some tethers with a Synonym different protocol. I don't know if you are building the stablecoin case first because of something or just because you happen to have similar goals. So that's my two questions.
So I will let Reza or Paulo answer the RGB aspect of the question because they'll probably be a lot more diplomatic than me. I'll just point out that that project actually I think has existed for 4 or 5 years and not shipped yet. And so that's all I'll say about that. But I think what you're asking with your second question, I'm not sure, but I think you're asking about like CFD or like DLC kind of constructions, and contrasting that to like asking why we're starting with just a kind of credit stablecoin. Maybe I misunderstood, but that's how I'll answer, which is we're choosing Tether to start with just basically because Tether actually exists and is used on the Omni chain. It is just a token that is available to do this demonstration. And as a company, we're all kind of part of the same vision and team, Tether, Bitfinex, Synonym. And so obviously we're going to, take advantage of this convenience and synergy to be able to just bring Tether to the Lightning Network. But the moment that our wallet is ready and that the LSP is ready and that Bitfinex has Omnibolt integrated with their form, it would be possible for any token that people want to issue using Omni to be on Lightning and to be within these kinds of paradigms and be bootstrapped. And so it's not something that we necessarily have any sort of exclusivity about, just so much as, we are pretty much Tether people and we're going to go ahead and show how you can do this with Tether. But I really, really want to see a lot of competition and a lot of other types of tokens like the kind we described earlier. But yeah, maybe Reza or Paulo could talk more about RGB.
Yeah, so I think there's a technical how that's the difference. There's also the scope of the project. So the reason why I pick Omni is that even though RGB is in development for 3 years, Omni is even longer, so it's more battle tested. So we want to get something out as soon as possible, get it out there, start iterating on it. And while the RGB project is still ongoing, there's still the scope of the project has grown and it's become quite large, and they're trying to accomplish many things. And while our approach is more, let's get just simple assets on Lightning working, and then if there's any other use cases out there, we'll let the market decide, and they could start developing their own things on it. So we're just focused on just the asset on Lightning use cases, and we got it working. Haven't checked RGB's status so far, how far they're along on there. They're still working on assets themselves or not. But yeah, as far as the way it works is also, there's a lot of user experience challenges with RGB, the way transactions are done on chain, while with Omni, it's quite simple. It's just a Bitcoin transaction. Yeah, there's a lot of trade-offs out there, and I mentioned before there could be some project out there that might prefer to use RGB because it provides some features that they want, but currently, as far as I know, it's not ready to be used.
So I think that from my point of view, RGB is a project that is still going through a heavy development side of things. I believe that I didn't follow the last months of development. So maybe having Omnibolt as a viable option now will push the other projects to fast track the actual base functionality that is using a Lightning Network style protocol to move tokens. So I believe that it's good that there is this first transaction out, there is the first protocol out, because it will push everyone else to move at a faster pace to catch up with the current only viable solution that still, of course, needs some work on. But I think competition is good to have all the other projects to try to catch up. Again, I believe that there will not be one single protocol to rule them all. So the more, the merrier, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that RGB is still working on their design. I think that they need to go through all of the kind of rigors and trials and phases that Omni and Omnibolt have had to go through, and that includes a really important one, which is auditing the actual design. They're trying to do a novel design, and it's not actually proven whether or not that design is sound. There could be the trade-offs. There could actually be something that becomes a huge deterrent and really just makes it either a really bad user experience or something that is needs more trust or more processing power or more storage or more centralization, or there just could be anything that could be a risk there that we're not quite aware of yet, because the amount of people that can fully understand the design so far, because it's complicated and has increased in scope, is very few. And so auditing it would be a real challenge, and I think that it really needs to go through that audit and have multiple teams confirming that the design is even sound before anybody could actually consider putting it into production and putting valuable tokens on it. But yeah, I brought up Mooncake, I think it was, if you're still here and want to ask a question, and I'll bring up one more person here, KJ.
Yeah, I think kind of, John, we have Nick is next on in terms of the speakers, Human.
Sorry, I didn't see you had brought up others already. Yeah, you can control it.
Sorry. No worries. Thanks for having me up. So I need to read a little bit more about Omni. So I apologize if this is a dumb question, but as far as I know, Omni's been around for quite a while, and it was initially super successful with Tether. And then a lot of the token issuance since then has gone to other chains like Ethereum and that kind of thing. And I'm just wondering like why you guys think that is, and what do you think um, it has happened here with this project that is really the unlock that will help bring that mind share back, and how you view that from like a business strategy perspective. And then is it like the capability to put it on Lightning, or is it something else in there?
I think it was like kind of a combination of things that happened in a sequence. I think it started with in 2017 when the Bitcoin blockchain became very congested before we had the SegWit fully activated and this kind of stuff. Like just in that year, things were different and the blockchain became full and the fees really increased. And at the same time, you had like kind of burgeoning scam use case of ICOs that were becoming popularized. And so people wanted their ICOs, they wanted their shitcoin narratives, and they wanted these transactions to be cheap, and they wanted this to flow freely. And so just as Tether was maybe going at that time, maybe it was still less than $1 billion, or maybe under 2 billion at least at that time. Just when it was starting to get off the ground, and when Omni was starting to become known and popular and accepted at exchanges and such, we had this kind of shitcoin narrative start to really dominate, and this kind of degen kind of culture grow, where people wanted not only the alternative to Bitcoin and like the shitcoin more blockchains, but they wanted the token ICO narrative on top of that. And I think that was partially a culture thing, where the culture of the people that were in shitcoins and issuing ICOs was not the culture of the people that would want to do this on Bitcoin, because that would just give them less narrative to convince newcomers and kind of realize that new blood that they were trying to get. And I'm sorry if I'm painting this in a more negative picture than maybe shitcoin supporters or sympathizers would, but this is really how it was to me when I was it. And so now we're at a situation where they've doubled down and added NFTs, which is like, instead of an ICO, we're going to turn every single token into an ICO. So there's like even more unique instances of this, but it's basically the same thing. It's just, a sentimental token, a sentimental security, sentimental art. It's not actual art. It's not an actual security like an ICO was. And so Ethereum narratives are again trying to lead it on the sentiment, and they've chosen, an even more, burdensome format in NFTs. And now these are going up, and they're experiencing the same thing that Bitcoin experienced, where like people want to migrate from, say, Ethereum NFTs to Solana NFTs to BNB NFTs or whatever. I don't even know what's popular these days. I stopped following it. But now we have a situation where the Lightning Network has become matured and providing actual scaling to a blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain. And so if you actually want to do things with tokens in a way that might be sustainable, you have now an option through Omnibolt and the future wallets that we'll create. And so now you'll be able to say, if you have actual utility and actual reasons to benefit from using a token, like say, for example, Tether, and using Tether instantly at retail and with merchants in an inexpensive way, we can provide that opportunity now. And so I do think it's a great time to look at Omni again, and to look at bringing token use cases back to Bitcoin in a practical and economical way, while the shitcoins are still focused on trying to shear the latest crop of sheep.
So really, it comes down to Lightning being available with Omni.
I mean, yeah, I think
from like a technical perspective,
being able, basically making tokens inexpensive and instant is the same practical use case of making Bitcoin inexpensive and instant. It's just for credit instead of a native money.
I also see things as zero sum. I mean, just because we have Omnivolt or Lightning assets doesn't mean the shitcoin, that world will probably just continue and they don't care. But we might just unlock some new cases, because as far as I know, there is no other peer-to-peer payment network out there. There's only Lightning Network. There was the Raiden network or something on Ethereum, but they gave up on that. A lot of other so-called L2 projects on a lot of these altcoins are just sidechain projects. They're not real payment networks. So I'm curious to see what is actually possible with assets on a peer-to-peer payment network, because that we've never really had that before.
For me, it's a matter of scalability. So when in 2017, Tether had to issue on Ethereum, the Bitcoin fees were quite high, and also everyone was complaining about the arbitrage opportunities lost, even within 10 minutes block time. So first of all, the ability of transacting at a much faster rate and pace is something that for a centralized token like Tether, in a way, makes sense, right? Tether is anyway centralized, so is the fact that you can move it faster. It's a bonus. Also, you have to keep in mind that peer-to-peer channels are the only real way to scale transactions. I believe that all the approaches that trying to see a layer one, trying to process as many transactions as possible. There are some layer ones that are saying that they can process tens of thousands of transactions per second. That from a pure scalability point of view is becoming more and more unfeasible, especially if you want to reach the limit of 100,000 transactions per second. Is going to be even more complex, because also if you want to give the real-time feeling, then you have the speed of light that is becoming a huge limit for you, right? You cannot reduce the block time below 350 milliseconds, probably, because the time for the light for a packet to reach from Milan to Tokyo is 150 milliseconds. And if you have to coordinate with many different parties, is going to be even more super complex. And the first time you have a little bit of glitch in the global network, your blockchain will go belly up. So the only way to scale transactions is actually using pure peer-to-peer, right? So there are today fridges that are buying, salad for yourself and light bulbs that are connected to internet reporting how much energy that they are consuming. So if IoT is going to become a real thing, I believe that Lightning tokens are something that is more and more interesting, because it's actually, imagine all the cars that are producing a ton of data. Everything is going to produce a ton of data, and that data can be tokenized and can be sold to the big companies that are really interested to have the data. For example, Google, or for example, Mitsubishi, they want to buy traffic data and so on and so forth. Electricity companies want to buy, consume information. So all this stuff will generate so much noise that you cannot have that noise on layer one, because I don't care what John's fridge is buying for him, and why should I care? So the only way is actually to establish a channel between the interested parties.
Yeah, cool. That makes sense. Well, I'm excited about what you guys are doing. I've got some other questions, but I'll just DM you about it, so I don't take up everybody's time.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Randy, we have next up Randy. Randy, do you have a question?
Yes, 5 seconds. It's you mentioned that Omnivolt it's a fork of LND, but you also mentioned that it doesn't support Bitcoin transactions, and it's going to be added to it. So it's actually not Lightning. It is a different network that needs to run a different node or something like that, and it's separated from the current Lightning network of nodes.
So you need to understand how Lightning actually works. There's no such thing as the Lightning Net. Lightning is basically a method of taking a Bitcoin transaction and creating it with a peer so you can create a channel together. And then the Lightning Network, and that's a channel. And then the Lightning Network is a way of stringing those channels together. But as soon as you try to add an asset, in addition to Bitcoin, you have to have a separate network. It doesn't matter which technology you choose, because it's a separate asset. And so already you have to bootstrap a second network. And the only thing that makes something the Lightning Network is whether or not you have a connection to it. And so, for example, PTLC channels are not compatible with HTLC channels, as far as I know. So when that deploys in the Lightning Network, you're going to have two separate channel sets and two separate networks. Now, you can add interoperability by allowing routing to be able to understand both types of channels, and you can even have things like atomic swapping or automated exchange rates advertised by nodes to be able to do conversions to hop over channels that don't have a specific asset. There are ways to add interoperability, but you have to understand there's no such thing as the Lightning Network, because we can create a private network using Lightning that the rest of the network doesn't even know about or see. And you can have multiple Lightning networks, and you can have subsets of rules of Lightning networks, and you can have interoperability across these separate Lightning networks that is not necessarily over Bitcoin. It could be over a token or a specific format of technology or a different way of invoicing. Like, there's already some fragmentation in how the Lightning networks support the base protocol. And so there's not going to be like an ultimate global Lightning network, because it's not meant to be that way. It's peer-to-peer. It isn't everybody connected to everybody. It's not global. Like, it's not a broadcast system like how Bitcoin is. And so when we talk about, the Lightning Network, I think we have to start talking about the technology of applying the Lightning channel method and creating a network out of it, because there's no way to do token or extra assets without effectively having a separate network. And the only thing that makes that network, be part of the Lightning Network as you understand it currently is just if that node also supports that technology. And you're going to see a lot of technologies like this that are not necessarily supported by every single Lightning node and every implementation. It's happening already with forking, with like one implementation wanting to do Bolt 12 and another implementation wanting to do AMP. And so you have this kind of incompatibility that's arising, and basically nodes and Lightning networks will compete on their features and not necessarily be a global system.
That's a great explanation. Then why you mentioned that the Omniball team needs to add Bitcoin payments to it if they could basically support HTLC, BLTLC separately, as you are saying?
Because what they focused on in creating Omnibolt was making it compatible, basically using the same format as the LND node used for Bitcoin. What they focused on was making that work for Omni transactions. Now, Omni transactions, they are Bitcoin transactions. So this is still Lightning. It is still, whether you want to call it the Lightning Network or a Lightning Network, it's still Lightning. And there's no way you can call it something else because it's using the same exact method. The difference is that this node is designed to basically only look at Omni-enabled Bitcoin UTXOs. And so thus it's not looking at non-Omni ones. It's only parsing those. And so what they have to do now is add back logic to be able to parse Bitcoin transactions that don't have Omni tokens in them. And part of the reason this is like an important and separate kind of process is in order to do and how they did the token, compatibility, they did it where they segregated the keys from the server. And this is something that LND does not do with Bitcoin transactions. And so it's actually a slightly different design, in my opinion, a better design. And I hope to see LND add this for normal Bitcoin transactions in their implementation. But now, so the Omni team has a decision to make, an architecture to design to where they either have to have two methods where they're using the client server model for Omni, and they're using the standard kind of all the keys in the node for LND, or they have to try to convert normal Bitcoin LND to be able to have the key segregation as well. And so that's why it's an intentional separate project to quote unquote add normal transactions.
Nice. I think next up we have Michael, then followed by KJ. Michael,
Hey.
please ask your question.
Okay, yeah, I'm just wondering about kind of the network topology and how you guys see the network effects playing out. So it sounds like you have to basically bootstrap your own network for each asset. I'm just wondering long term, like if I'm running a Lightning node and can I choose to support like Tether in one of my other channels? So maybe 9 of my channels are Bitcoin channels, and one of them's Tether, and then I kind of keep my peers and benefit from the Lightning Network's current topology. And then kind of like a little further is, let's say like you add USDC, and then later on you add a 10th asset. Is that 10th asset going to have a much easier time bootstrapping its network effects than this first USDT asset you support? That's it.
I'll start with your last question, which is I do think that the more the technology matures, the more options and interoperability, features will be included. And so thus, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, somebody trying to get their token into the Lightning, network technology or the Lightning Network ecosystem is probably going to be a lot easier because there'll be a lot of interoperability that will have matured within the nodes. And so to answer the first parts of your question, currently already there is atomic swapping capability within Omnibolt. We haven't actually implemented it yet or looked at like how deep the feature set is. It's like a next phase of things we need to work on, and I believe that even the Omnibolt team still wants to polish it up. But basically, I think you're going to have several ways of creating interoperability across assets and across channel types to where you can use something like either atomic swapping or basically advertising exchange rates within the routing table. And so you can have these methods basically adding interoperability by allowing nodes to kind of communicate on a more multi-layered level. You say, okay, like this is what I will charge to convert my asset into Bitcoin for this channel, and the person on the other end of the channel happens to have Tether, and they'll convert it back to Tether for you if you want to be delivering Tether in the end. And so you can kind of jump asset types and channels through atomic swapping. But obviously, like the longer the route is and the more assets you include, the complexity begins like to become exponential, most likely. And so you have to be careful assuming that everything is just going to work with everything, because it's just not going to be economical in the end. And mostly what you'll probably see, at least definitely in the early times, will be more like relevant networks where people are more directly connected, and like hubs are connecting to hubs. I actually kind of think Lightning is going to end up this way anyway. I think it will be a network of hubs and spokes where all the hubs are connected, and most people are spoke connected to one hub or maybe two or three hubs at most. And there won't be this kind of paradigm of everybody trying to connect to everybody, because it will just be too expensive.
That makes sense. Thanks. So as a follow-up, just to make sure I understood correctly, are you kind of suggesting that, let's say my node supports USDT and I want to send it over to your node, are you suggesting a feature where I swap USDT into Bitcoin and then route, the Bitcoin routes easily on the Lightning Network until it gets to you, and then you just swap it back to USDT?
Sort of. What I'm suggesting is that nodes could add support for basically an exchange rate and related to whatever multiple assets they have channels for. So if my node has Bitcoin channels with this guy and Tether channels with that guy, and then that guy who has Tether channels has like a USDC channel with another guy and a Bitcoin channel with some other guy, like we could actually, if we share this information with each other and create routing tables about it, we could thus advertise these rates and create these kind of complex multi-asset routes. But like I said, like this is only so practical, and the fees to convert could be probably pretty high in a nascent network. So I would say that the focus and how we're trying to start is just by bootstrapping directly and saying we're going to have an LSP that will provide and sell liquidity in Tether specifically, and just try getting one extra asset going, and then we'll see once another asset becomes popularized, then there'll be a lot more incentive to kind of add this interoperability and an exchange kind of concept.
Got it. And then for that hub and spoke kind of topology that you mentioned, that's also easiest for me to imagine, but I'm just wondering, like, what kind of limitations are there for channel liquidity? I've got to imagine it's relatively low, like you can't just have $100,000 there in a channel, or are the limits significantly different than for native Bitcoin Lightning channels?
I mean, generally there are no actual limits. The problem that you're going to run into is mostly things to do with like American call option problems, where if you have like $1 billion of Tether inside of a channel that only has $10 of Bitcoin in it, you start having a lopsided incentive where miners might be incentivized to kind of watch the Omni network and gather information about on channels to see if there are ways they could manipulate and overcharge you or deny you access or things like this. So you don't want to be like putting an obscene amount of money in any channel really. But as you can see, Bitcoin is already using like pretty large channels. The largest one at the moment is, but I'm pretty sure we've seen channels that have like 5 or 8 BTC in them, and maybe even higher. I don't recall the record, but so there's plenty of liquidity that's possible in an appropriate way. Like I don't see any reason why Bitfinex couldn't have like a 10 Bitcoin channel with $500,000 of tether inside of it as well, and be kind of routing through that. And every exchange and every hub could do something similar to that.
Okay, and one last question. This is kind of like far out, and maybe it's going to show that I don't understand OmniBolt very well. But at the beginning of this, you kind of said OmniLayer is nothing more than just some extra data attached to a Bitcoin transaction. So have you already started thinking about, like I'm thinking, are smart contracts something that's on the roadmap? Like can you just attach a zero knowledge proof to these transactions in the future and just validate them on, either in like in the Omni layer or this OmniBolt Lightning layer? Is that straightforward, or are there major roadblocks there?
You're getting a little bit out of my league. I don't know if maybe Resident Paul can answer, but I'll say this, that specifically that extra data that Omni uses, op return data. And it's basically, Omni nodes are parsing this encoded data within the op return to be able to understand the token information about that UTXO. But like you're talking about scripting and other things like this, and I'll just say that's one of the reasons we're hiring a C++ dev right now, is because we want to basically keep Omni robust, but we also want to see if we can innovate. And so we want to see if there are ways that we can like add efficiencies or add functionality by, say, maybe using taproot transactions instead of using SegWit transactions or legacy transactions, and just relying on op return. There might be other ways that we could kind of upgrade Omni and OmniBolt to add either more privacy or more more optimization or just more features. And so we want to start exploring those areas, but I don't think I have like a specific good answer for you as far as like what could be done definitely with like added smart contract functionality in the context of Omni.
Awesome. Paulo, John, do you want to add something to that? And John, maybe you can move a little bit closer to your router.
So on my side, I think that the smart contract capabilities are something that are likely going to make sense to have it in a channel rather than on the main layer. It's in a way you can build a client-side validated smart contract. That I believe that is something that RTP might also look. I believe that they are working on it. Also makes more sense, right? So you want to validate only the smart contracts that you really do care about, right? The ones that are in your channel. In the end, what's happening in your channel, it stays in your channel. So yeah, I think that smart contract scripting should be at the client rather than of the base layer.
Reza, if you have anything to add, please do.
Yeah, so I think one of the interesting things about having a separate asset network is that we're able to do some of these experiments on there. Currently, it'll be cool to have these smart contracting capabilities on there, but currently the way it works is exactly with the Lightning Network. So all the capabilities of the Lightning Network is what we can replicate. And now to go beyond that, this is, I guess, one of the great things about having an asset network is, you could start experimenting with some of these ideas over there. And I want to add something to one of your previous questions about the network topology, is that I think one way to look at it is like cities. And then when you want to enter a city or go through a highway, there's gateways that you have to go through. And on those gateways, there's the swaps that could happen. And I think atomic swapping is an area where, we could do some smart contract-like interactions using, HODL invoices, and there are ways to do multi similar to multi-sig transactions, but with Lightning. So I think there are things that could be done, but I think it's too early to say exactly what's possible.
Awesome. Let's move on to KJ before we go to D3 Coach.
Hey guys, how's it going? Super interesting conversation. I love to see that Tether is coming back to Omni on Lightning. I used to use it back in the day and hated to see that it moved over to Ethereum and then other chains. So I'm glad to see it coming back. So that's awesome. I just had two quick questions. I wanted to ask, obviously, probably some people here have been following what's happening with the UST stablecoin, which is kind of like a decentralized stablecoin. It's kind of like a new idea running on Luna, the Luna ecosystem. So I was wondering if you guys think like how you feel about that, what you think, whether that would be a good thing to kind of move towards. Obviously, Bitcoin and Tether are great, and Lightning and Tether would be great, but to move from Bitcoin and to combine it with a centralized stablecoin, it seems like those two, the ethos is kind of aligned there. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that. And then also, I was wondering if you guys were familiar with a project called Thorchain, and they're basically a decentralized cross-chain that happened natively on-chain, and it's actually the only project that has Bitcoin natively on-chain to cross between, for example, Bitcoin converted to USDT directly. It happens on-chain on both of those chains. So this conversation just made me think it would be interesting if somehow there was plans or a discussion to implement Lightning into that project directly, and then suddenly it unlocks a whole ecosystem of a whole bunch of liquidity on a whole bunch of different chains. So I don't know if you guys have any comments or anything to say. I'd like to hear that.
So I'm not very experienced with Thorchain, so I will answer the UST point that you made. I believe that definitely is good to see stable coins using Bitcoin as a collateral. I believe that everything that uses Bitcoin as a collateral is a good thing. So I don't feel that is necessarily competition for Tether is like, and if also competition is a great thing, as I said before. One concern they have is not that Tether didn't think to this idea as well, but the concern that I would have is how big can become a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin, right? How many Bitcoin you can collect. So it's all fun and games when you go from 1 billion to 10 billion, but then it becomes harder and harder the more you grow, because then the backing is if you have 70, 80, 90 billion stablecoin and you are triggering liquidation event, is going to be going really hard on all the token holders. So the bigger it becomes, the harder it's going to get when you have to liquidate positions. So of course, if you have to liquidate $5 billion current market, you can still achieve that with a reasonable time frame. If you have to liquidate 30 billion, is another is really different. So I think that although it's a great idea, with Bitcoin at this price, I believe that is I'm not sure how big can become. That's basically my point. I think that one interesting thing about how I would implement new types of stable coins are actual stable channels where you can actually have a sort of IOU of a dollar inside the channel, and in a way you since dollars are kind of trusted, you could have a third party confirming the solvency of the two sides of the channel. So in this way, you could have liquidity, US dollar liquidity dedicated to a specific channel, but you don't need to have a single huge pot of money that is the entire, that is a single stable coin, but you can have imagine a different stable coin for each channel.
Yeah, I'd like to add, I guess with the Thorchain, I don't know exactly how Thorchain works, but I do know that I mentioned before early on that there are a lot of these altcoin projects out there that like to attach themselves and claim to do things with Bitcoin that which is not really possible in a truly trustless, decentralized way. So the difference, I guess, I don't know exactly how Thorchain works, but I'm assuming it probably needs some internal token to make it work properly. With Omnibolt and Omni, all the transactions are paid in Bitcoin, and they're just Bitcoin transactions. And if you're doing any sort of swapping, these are just atomic. So if any coin out there would make themselves compatible with an atomic swap that a Bitcoin can do, then it would work. But usually in any research that I've done in any of these projects that claim to do things with Bitcoin that Bitcoiners haven't figured out is they usually find ways to centralize or do something that is just against the Bitcoin ethos, or you might have some internal token to do something with it, or usually that's my research into all of these projects has led me to.
So I'm going to be a lot less diplomatic than Reza and Paulo have been. Is my signal okay at the moment, guys?
Yes, it's very good again.
Okay. Yeah, so I kind of want to be a little more explicit and direct about these ideas. So I also don't know much about Thorchain, but I'll just say in regards to like meta chains, interoperable chains, atomic swapping across chains, I think all of it is bullshit. I think there's no good reason really to put Bitcoin on another chain, and really, and actually, there's not really much good reason to make transferability from an altcoin to Bitcoin either, because it would just drain the shitcoin. And so I think that all of these things are just gimmicks and narratives that people use, like Reza was alluding to, like they want to use the kind of affinity of Bitcoin and the kind of trust of Bitcoin and rub themselves on it and try to get a little bit on their shitcoin. But it's never going to sustain. It's just going to end up creating traps for people. And so for Thorchain, I don't really know what it is, but it sounds like something to do with chain interoperability and moving across chains. I just think it's useless. I think if you want Bitcoin, use Bitcoin. If you want to use the shitcoin, use the shitcoin. Hopping across them can just as easily be done with a change or any type of other swapping mechanism. Like Reza was saying, you could do atomic swaps, but I just don't think that that's something actually people care so much about. Now, when it comes to something like UST, which is like, I don't know, it's like, it just seems like the latest hyped shitcoin. And if you look into it, I think you're going to find that there's some kind of trap there. You can see this and you can kind of pick up the signals by it being promoted by a bunch of pseudonym accounts and a bunch of people shilling something that's just supposed to be a stable coin, by like the usual Bitcoin suspects having shitcoin envy about the amount of money that these people are claiming to, liquidity into Bitcoin. And all these people just care about people pumping their bags, Bitcoiners and the shitcoiners. The shitcoiners want to get like the percent APR. The Bitcoiners want to see the price pump and like have convenient narratives to say Bitcoin is king. It's all a bunch of nonsense. Like, there is no good reason to be backing a stable coin with Bitcoin. The whole point is to have it be stable with the underlying asset. So why would you use a totally different asset to back it? It's nonsense. It's a narrative. And so, like Paulo was saying, there's going to be some sort of moment where the thing gets too big or gets rug pulled or becomes a trap somehow that gets locked into a court case or something. But there's something going on there that is not legitimate. There's something going on there that's seedy and underhanded. And I would personally stay entirely away from it as far as possible as you can from it, because I just think that there's definitely an outside incentive for the design, and it's not actually a useful or practical design. And I don't think that Bitcoiners should be hopping on this bandwagon to support it or promote it, because it's just custodial Bitcoin instead of in an exchange. It's inside of this, this stable quote unquote coin construction, and I would not touch it. As far as what Paulo mentioned with like stable channels and things like that, I've talked enough, and I'll just say I recorded a session with Stefan Rivera this morning, a podcast, and we talk about it a little bit, and so he'll release that this weekend, and you guys can listen to that.
Yeah, I wanted to
So
just quickly add something just Paolo mentioned that I think there's just people have talked about it recently. So there's another concept out there called the stable channels with using Bitcoin backed, using DLCs. So those types of projects are completely different use cases, and the way they work is completely different, and the goals are kind of different to what a stable coin channels are. So That's just a misconception that some people have brought up with.
Nice. Let's move on to D3 Code. What is your question?
Hi everyone. So my question was lately, and I don't know if I just kind of happened to have encountered this string of coincidental occurrences, but I've seen the narrative that Lightning is inflationary kind of picking up speed in the last 2 weeks, and I was wondering if anyone knew where that's originating from, or if that's just like a recycled Tether FUD narrative.
It's absolute nonsense. I mean, Lightning is made out of Bitcoin transactions. Like this is Bitcoin transactions. Like any concept of it being inflationary is just totally nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Yeah,
I just noticed that, like, that narrative, I've just seen it pick up, like, in more spaces I've kind of hopped across that aren't Bitcoin.
I'd recommend hanging out in differences.
I would say that you can, for example, on 1ML or a lot of these Lightning Explorers, you can verify each channel that's on chain. There are unannounced channels or private channels that aren't announced, and usually, like in the capacity numbers, those numbers not reflected. So, yeah, on the Explorers, which I think that some people get their numbers from, you could go and visibly see on chain these transactions.
All right. Paulo needs to leave. So Paulo, maybe just kind of before you leave, kind of let people say bye and let them know where to find you.
Yes, so thank you very much for everyone for your time. So you can follow me on Twitter at Paulo Arduino, name, surname, and thank you again. Please keep following Synonym and all the magic word of Lightning tokens, because I believe that we are going to get faster in building on this technology and delivering a stronger foundation for this technology. So I think we are finally there. I also would recommend to invest a little bit of time and energies if you can support the projects with feedback, with testing, and so on. Because one of the things that I always say is that there are not many companies that actually are pouring money in Bitcoin-related projects. So I'm proud to be part of one of the two of the companies that are actually doing this. But we need to. We are too few, and we need to keep pushing to maintain the pace or trying to fight the growth of other blockchains that, of course, are in a way are leaving Bitcoin tech in the shadow for the moment. So thank you very much for your time again.
Thanks, Paulo.
Awesome. I think is anybody else has a question? If not, I'm gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, there was one person on stage, but it looks like they left. So we'll give everybody maybe 5 more seconds to request, and I think we're done. As far as like where you can find us, obviously you can see the Synonym account, you can see Reza's account. Please follow Reza. He's our CTO, and making hot, spicy tweets for Bitcoin topics. You can follow me, Bitcoin Error Log, on Twitter, and you can follow Synonym is synonym_to. We have a website, synonym.to. You can visit if you want to learn more about our products and our roadmap. And we will be basically doing this spaces every month. We're going to try to do one about a different topic related to the things that we're working on, and give people a chance to ask questions and learn more about all of our stack and design decisions. Looks like we have Namcios from Bitcoin Magazine that wants to ask a question.
Awesome. And John, try to move again too close to your router or something like that.
Yeah, it's not the router. I think it's because I'm recording the session at the same time as speaking.
Hi, thanks, John. Can you hear me? Fine?
Yes.
Okay. No, I was on and off in these spaces, but so apologies if that has been asked already. I remember you talking a little bit about like a short explainer for Omni. I think that's the main knowledge gap for most people trying to understand this, including myself. So could you just explain with a little bit more detail Omni and OmniBolt, just so I can wrap my head around it like a little bit better?
Reza, you want to give it a try since mine sucks?
Yeah, so with Omni, Omni is a protocol that's built on Bitcoin. It's an on-chain protocol. It's transactions. An Omni asset is just you could issue an Omni asset on Bitcoin, and the transactions are just a regular Bitcoin transaction with some metadata attached to it. Uh, if you want to run your own Omni node, an Omni node is just a Bitcoin node, but it scans the blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain, and reads those metadata that then you could see your current balance. And OmniBolt is an effort to essentially take those Omni assets and move them to Lightning Network. So each asset would create its own asset network. And yeah, these asset networks work pretty much identical to regular Bitcoin network. And yeah, I think that's the gist of it.
Yeah, thank you for that. And about like repairability, how do you
So
guys see like kind of like the main just for like incentives for the wallets to implement it and like or if so people don't get like vendor locked in, right? How that's gonna look like.
well, I guess if Bitcoiners currently want to use stable coins, there's Omni on-chain, but Omni on-chain, 10-minute blocks of Bitcoin, it might be too slow for them, so then they might have to use one of these, shitcoin networks. But with OmniBolt, you're able to have instant tether, so that's an incentive. And Tether has proven itself that it's usable. There's demand out there, so we believe that it will be able to establish its own liquidity network. And as for interoperability with the Bitcoin Lightning Network, I think that would probably happen through like maybe atomic swaps, or these are separate networks, but they work very similar. So I think there might be a lot of innovation happening in order to build various interoperability.
As far as the aspect of your question with like vendor lock-in and interoperability and incentives, I think that you have to remember that this is true for every single new way of paying with Bitcoin, for every single soft fork, for every single new layer. You always have this kind of concept of there's going to be at least one first implementation, always going to be one that is the most popular implementation, and then it kind of grows from there. And so we're just trying to grow this from the start. But everything that we're doing is going to be open sourced. So there's not really going to be a concept of lock-in so much as only the people that are interoperable or supporting or integrating this technology are going to be the ones that can offer it. And so that doesn't mean that other people can't offer it. It just means it has to start somewhere. And so we believe that the use case is, pretty evident to use Tether and to use Tether on the Lightning Network. I think that stablecoins are already shown that they're pretty popular. And I think that we've given a lot of additional use cases and narratives and ideas to people for how they could use credit tokens in other ways. This is all now, retail friendly. This is something that consumers could use at points of sale and merchants could accept. And this can all be instant and, affordable. And so I think that the use cases are there. And if we're wrong, hey, well, at least we did something new and we made a new mistake instead of the same mistakes everybody else is already making. I don't think we'll be wrong, or at least I don't think we'll be perfect, but I do think that this is something worth doing, and I do think it will bring utility and bring more users to Bitcoin and Lightning.
Awesome. I think that's pretty much it. Now, Matthias, if you have any more questions, or are we going to wrap it up?
No, it's cool to wrap it up with me. I think I got the gist of what John was saying, even though he broke up a few times there, but all good.
Great. Okay, then thanks everybody for listening. Again, kind of follow the Synonym account. Just kind of click on the little icon there. Follow it. Also, kind of there's a website synonym.to. And kind of check out what's happening. Also follow Reza, the CTO of Synonym, and John, who's kind of joining from the Synonym account, but his regular account is at Bitcoin Error Log. Follow him and stay tuned. There's many exciting things coming up. There's a bunch of protocols, apps, and more software shipping very, very soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. 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 Thank you.